Dave, welcome to Podcastina.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming.
I'm very much looking forward to jumping down some rabbit holes today.
Oh my gosh, me too. First rabbit hole. What can you tell me about hypnosis?
Where do we want to start? So, I think the first place to start when it comes to hypnosis is it's a completely natural, normal state that everyone goes into twice a day. So, you know that state where you're just waking up, or maybe you're going to sleep. Your eyes are closed, but you're still aware of the outside world. That hypnagogic state is the exact same light trance that everyone goes into twice a day when they're waking up or going to sleep. So hypnosis isn't something that's woo-woo or nonsense, new age, anything like that. It's something that every single human does. Every single thing that wakes and sleeps does every single day.
So it's just a different brainwave pattern that's either right before we fall asleep or right after. That's like the simple way of putting it.
The simplest way of putting it, yeah, absolutely. Taking it down to like a full reductionist sort of way is saying that it is a completely normal brainwave coupled with physiology and, breathing and everything that goes into that to allow you to be awake whilst your body is asleep. So your mind can go through many different brainwaves. Right now, it's 7:30 in the morning here in Australia, and so I'm probably sitting somewhere between alpha and theta brainwaves. I've had a little bit of caffeine. I've had my ADHD meds separately, obviously, and my brain right now is quite calm. It's cool. I'm quite lucid, and I'm somewhere in between that, like I said, alpha and theta brainwaves. When you're in hypnosis, that is the state of teaching your body to go from awake and alert down, resting your muscles, resting your breathing, calming yourself down so that you're pretty relaxed as if you're going to sleep whilst your mind stays active.
What is it about that state that makes us so suggestive while we're in it?
There's this thing called the critical faculty. So the critical faculty, think of it like a security guard for your mind. It's sitting there always paying attention to everything, every piece of stimulus that comes in through the five senses. And then it's making a decision in the moment, whether it gets accessed and cemented into your unconscious mind for long-term storage to become a part of like your beliefs and your values, or any structures that might be going on unconsciously for you to have a updated map for the outside world. Our minds are extremely complicated when it comes to just simple things that we take for granted, like, oh yeah, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. That's a belief that I have. It's something that every single human has as a belief, going, yeah, well, it rises over there and goes over there. That belief has been reinforced with evidence over and over and over. And that's part of what the critical faculty is doing in real time. It's sitting there going, okay, this is bullshit. That's truth. Like it's kind of differentiating what's going on in the outside world for our internal world. The reason why people become so suggestible is because language patterns are designed to get you out of the way, get that security guard out of the way. And then that way, deep suggestions can go straight to the unconscious mind, especially crafted linguistic patterns that allow it to lock in even further. So there's things in hypnosis that are called embedded commands, or using nominalizations, things that just confuse the conscious mind, confuse the critical faculty a little bit, and just allow things to slip in a little bit easier.
Can you give me a couple examples? I've never heard that word nominalization before.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just bring it open. Where is it? So a nominalization is a process word which has been frozen in time and made into a noun. So the example is will provide you with new insights and with new understanding. So it doesn't exactly give a normal sentence. If you listen to this here, will provide you with new insights and with new understanding. It's like no one in normal consciousness speaks like that, do they?
No.
Yeah, so I just did that just then. I used a tag question that embedded the command and the presuppositions of what I said into your mind so that you accepted it as if it was fact.
It's eerie.
It's a little bit uncomfortable, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It caught me off guard.
Yeah, so everyone uses linguistics like this, whether we know it or not. It's just the way that we communicate. And when you have studied language patterns and linguistics, it becomes a lot easier to communicate to people's unconscious minds and deep seed in suggestions through normal consciousness. Politicians use it all the time. Media people use it all the time. That's what that like word salad or double speak is. Whenever you hear a politician go into some kind of jargon, rambly nonsense, it's because one, they're not well versed in what they're talking about. They just have to talk about it. So they'll come along and use a bunch of nonsense that essentially scrambles people's minds and makes you go, what did I just hear?
What's the practical application? Why would someone want to do that?
Confusion is a really good thing for keeping people under control. When you confuse people, it becomes almost like a secret weapon that people don't know about. So you can deep seed in things that you want them to believe instead of them believing their actual reality. So if I make people confused and afraid enough, you can deep seed pretty much anything. Perfect example is look at what's happened over the last 5 years, starting with the pandemic, moving through the thing that can't be spoken about on podcasts even to this day, because otherwise it gets demonetized and, thrown out of the algorithms. The moment that you make people afraid, they become suggestible. You confuse people with a bunch of misinformation and disinformation, and then a bunch of conflict about those two, then they become suggestible. So essentially, the moment that you hijack the amygdala, which is the reptilian part of the brain, it's the oldest part of our essentially neurological structures, you can then hijack that in a way that makes them have a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response, putting them into a trauma response essentially. Then you can use a bunch of jargon that goes in through, bypasses the critical faculty and says, believe this instead.
Oof. Are there non-evil applications? There
Yes,
must
absolutely.
be.
Always. So in a therapeutic sense, the thing when you go do your hypnosis training or you go do like NLP training or anything like that, we're always looking for ecology. So ecology, sadly, is semantics, much like language is semantics. You can make anything mean anything to anyone else. In ecology means, is this in the best interest of the person that I'm working with right now? And because when it comes to hypnosis and being in a coaching framework, there's agreements that go inside of the coaching framework. So you say things like, I am going to be an aid for you to help you get the best results possible as a part of healing, whatever pain you have, removing parts, helping you to become more confident and have more, empathy and all these sorts of things. Like there's a wide range of doing it in a therapeutic model. And so essentially what you're doing is getting multiple layers of agreement from a physical perspective, getting a signature on a page of an agreement going, yep, this is what we're here for. So the person's bought into that. And then you say, I have your best interest at heart, so you can trust me. And then so already there's embedded commands inside of that. So that's another layer. And then when you build rapport with the person using language, matching and mirroring their body language, their breathing rate, their speech rate, eventually they will get to the point where they trust you so that you can go do deep work. Majority of the time when it comes to hypnosis, the first maybe 10, 15 minutes of hypnosis is all about rapport building. And that's not including them listening to the words that I say to put them into a trance, because all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. For you to go into hypnosis, you would have to follow the suggestions of the words that I'm using. So if I say, take a deep breath and close your eyes, you have to be the one that physically does that. I can't do it for you. So getting that agreement and trust to say, I'm making noises out of my face that mean something, and you have to internalize those meanings and then follow along with what those words actually mean in a verb sense. So it takes it from being just words. You have to turn the words, the nouns, into verbs. So the way that you do that is by adding a bunch of commands or taglines, tag questions at the end of things. It'd be a good idea to do that, wouldn't it? Those sorts of things. And then
So
once we're in
powerful.
that, that's where we can dive into the therapeutic model and start working with, healing negative emotions, limiting beliefs, fixing up any complexes, doing like deep regression work, shadow work. Like there's so many applications in a therapeutic model to use hypnosis, especially if there's a lot of trauma bound up inside of the nervous system. You can use hypnosis to kind of slightly dissociate the conscious mind from the body. So you get this top-down approach, you get this observer effect, where the client doesn't necessarily have to sit associated in the memories, in whatever trauma or whatever happened. You can get them to be dissociated, so they're looking down on the event without any feelings of the event, and they can use an objective reality, or as close to an objective reality as possible. And you can switch them around from places. So say I've got the trauma here, I can get them to look down from this perspective at the top, which allows them to see, bird's eye perspective. They get a bigger view of the landscape. But I can also get them to look at other people's perspectives inside of that memory, where you can go, hey, what did it look like from your mother's perspective? What was some of the things that she was seeing and she was feeling that you weren't because of what was happening? And then you can associate into that person's perspective and say, oh, well, whatever was present was present. And then that aids another layer of healing and integration, because as a human, there's so many things, so many bits of information coming into our mind. At any one time, we're dealing with the latest neuroscience is somewhere between 32 million to 64 million bits of information every single second. And that's what your unconscious mind is taking care of. That's what the critical faculty, that security guard, is taking care of our minds, is constantly going, no, this isn't good for us. Yes, that can come in. Well, we believed this about ourselves. So this belief where someone came along and overstepped our boundaries, that doesn't matter because we've done it before. So that can happen again. So it's really important that we do the deep introspective work, like through hypnosis, doing shadow work, doing parts work, where we're understanding all of those unconscious parts. Because without that, how do we know who created those belief systems and values and presuppositions of our life that we just take as fact? Because it wasn't us. It was, to be honest, it was done when we were a child. So who are the authority figures that were in our lives that installed all of those beliefs? Money doesn't grow on trees. You got to work hard for money. Love doesn't last, or whatever these limiting beliefs are. They're sitting inside of your neurology right now, running the show. And it wasn't you who created it. It was the 5-year-old version of you who's put your parents on a pedestal and said, oh my God, what they say matters. So I've got to do everything that they say. I'm a good little boy, good little girl. And then all of a sudden now you're in your 20s or 30s going, my life is pretty screwed up and I don't know why.
Oh, it's like we didn't hire the security guard that you're talking about.
Yeah, it's there, but it wasn't hired deliberately by us. However, the moment that you have that information, it's up to you now, because you have the information to proceed with it or to proceed against it. It's kind of like a duality moment where you go, there's new information. Can the security guard discern that this is actually good information for me, for greater wholeness, or am I going to reject this? Because people listening right now, they've already either decided that this is good information, or they've rejected it as if it's bad information and they've turned off.
Well, it's a shame for them, but I think with hypnosis, just that word, I want to do a little bit of myth busting for you, because I think most people's first impression was they saw whatever magician on stage swinging a pocket watch in front of someone's eyes and, ooh, you're hypnotized and now you're going to quack like a duck. And that's not what it is. So can you actually do a little bit of myth busting for me and tell people what an appointment looks like if they were to go into one?
Yes. So everyone that does hypnosis is completely different. The way that I like to do things is I like to use multiple modalities throughout my coaching practice, just so that we're hitting it from as many different perspectives as possible. There's going to be a massive information overload, and that's kind of the point. One thing that I've learned as a coach and a hypnotherapist is when I have deep rapport and I can watch their body soften into the chair that they're sitting in, and there's a congruence with their body language with the words that I'm saying, like as I'm nodding along, they're nodding along and matching me. My breath rate is the same as their breath rate. There's comfort, there's softness on the face. They're not sitting closed body language like this. They're open, they're ready to accept what's going on. That's where I will embed some commands to the unconscious, like the conscious mind might forget this. However, the unconscious mind always remembers, because the unconscious mind, the highest prime directive of the unconscious is self-preservation. And this is in the best interest of the self, isn't it? And then that's where they go, well, yeah, it's a lot of jargon, but yeah. And then that's where I use a lot of technical terms, because the unconscious is always going to remember. However, consciously, I want you to have an effect where you might not understand. However, there's some deep work that's taken place because you can feel it inside of you. You feel differently. And then there's some external things, some physical, tangible things that you'll start seeing made manifest in your life, because everything that happens inside of your mind, you create your goals from that unconscious place that goes out into the outside world. And we literally like map our internal structures onto the world around us. So everything that's inside of there, you'll start to see made manifest, because that's the way that our unconscious creates the map of the terrain around us anyway. The moment that you change anything unconsciously, it starts to change in the external world consciously, and you'll become aware of it. So knowing all of that, that's the framework that I set everyone up with. To take them from that place where they're having an experience, they have to be the ones, like I said, to follow my words. So I'll say things, okay, are you ready to go into trance now or in 5 minutes time? And then they determine what that time frame is. And that's called a double bind. So I've given them no chance. They're going into a trance, they're going into hypnosis. And the moment that they decide on the time frame there and then is the moment that trance actually starts. So I can say things like, do you want to go into trance now or in 5 minutes time? And then they make the choice. And if they say now, I go, fantastic. You know exactly what that feels like, don't you? And then now you need to take a deep breath, close your eyes, and I want you to feel the level of relaxation spreading through your entire body. And the moment that we do that, notice your eyes are already starting to get heavier, because you're starting to pay attention to the words that I'm using right now. You see that for yourself?
I do. And
Yeah.
that kind of leads me into, are you able to pick up on a person's somatic response and be able to sense whether they're authentically doing it or not?
Yeah, absolutely. However, people have a story when it comes to hypnosis. They think all of the presuppositions that go into it. So a presupposition is anything that is pre-assumed. When you hear hypnosis, most people, like you said, you think of a magician doing stage tricks with a pocket watch or, a crystal or something like that, saying you're getting very sleepy. That's not how it works always. For some people, like myself, I have the ability to do what's called somnambulism. So I can get into the deepest realm of trance possible. That's where spontaneous remission can happen. You can install new memories, new sensations, new feelings. There's this thing called a full body catalepsy. So it's where you can force the body, force is the wrong word because it's all done with congruence. You can suggest to the body that it becomes stiff and rigid like a steel beam, and you can suspend someone from their heels on a chair with their head on a chair and nothing underneath them, and it's just their full body. When I did my hypnosis training and we figured this out, that's something that I could do, I went into a full body catalepsy for, I don't know, maybe 5-10 minutes and had people standing on me whilst I was suspended in between two chairs. Yeah. So at the time I was like 135 kilos, which I was very overweight when I did it, very unhealthy. And however, my mind was still able to do that. My body was still able to follow the suggestions of the mind and have people stand on me. So my body weight suspended between my head and my feet, plus another person's body weight standing on me, and a perfect steel beam. So it's all about the internal representation and how well you can follow those suggestions. Because it's not woo-woo, it's not magic. Everyone can do this. The level and the experience is completely different though. There's probably only about somewhere around 5, maybe 10% of the population who traditional hypnosis won't work for. They're the ones that are very analytically minded. They're very skeptical because they're hesitant. The ones that can get into a light form of trance, they're the ones that are suggestible to an extent, but there's nothing really profound about hypnosis for them. Then there's the vast majority that can fit into some form of trance work, go into a meditative state, because that's probably the closest thing approximating to what deep hypnosis actually is. And then there's maybe 10-15% of the population that can do somnambulism like I can. So when it comes to an experience, the experience is the experience. You don't judge, you don't label, you just go with it. The moment that you bring too much thinking is the moment that the trance is destroyed, because you're too analytical. You need to surrender into the process and have that deep trust and rapport with the person who is using the induction word, so you can follow the suggestion and go down into those deeper realms of trance.
You reminded me of when I was a child and I would go to slumber parties, and all of us girls would play this game called Light as a Feather, Stiff as a Board. I don't know if you had it growing up in Australia, but it was very similar to what you're describing, where a bunch of girls, like one of us, would lay down on the floor and we would all just start chanting light as a feather, stiff as a board, until you could like pick up the girl who was laying down with two fingers. That was what we were doing at the time. But it really, it almost sounds like, obviously there's going to be a sliver of the population that, as you said, like intellectualizes their feelings too much. They're going to be skeptical, they're not going to give in, they're going to bring that resistance to the table. But I think to an extent this work is probably more beneficial to people who have already started on their journey with maybe some kind of somatic therapy or just being in their bodies, or they have experience meditating, because it sounds like you do need to connect. Like I think an earlier version of me that didn't feel my feelings and didn't know how to kind of turn that analytical part of my brain off ever wouldn't have been welcome to this kind of work. So I wonder if there's, you know, other modalities outside of that that they should do with it, or is hypnosis enough?
When it comes to hypnosis, majority of people that use hypnosis as a modality through their therapy practices use linguistics outside of hypnosis. So I'm a master practitioner of NLP. NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. A lot of people poo-poo NLP for the reasons that it's not scientific. And anything, the moment that you bring out it's not scientific or it's a pseudoscience, people turn their mind off. They go, no, cool, it's nonsense. I don't need to pay attention to that. However, the biggest thing that is holding people back is being way too skeptical and not curious enough. Because curiosity is the thing that allows you to explore without gripping hold of, without locking it into who you are as a part of your belief structure. So there's a lot of things that I'll look at and I'll go, that's interesting. Can you tell me more about it? Instead of going, no, that's bullshit, I don't believe it. And when it comes to using NLP, so NLP is using language patterns to bypass the conscious mind to go straight to the unconscious mind without being in trance. So there's things called covert linguistics when you're talking with people that gets them to agree to things or to even make changes without having to close their eyes and go inwards. There's a lot of things that we can do to, the analogy is everyone's got a really tight grip of their world and the way that they view their world, the way that they experience it, the way that food tastes, the way that the colors appear. And using linguistics, we can free up and just loosen that grip a little bit. So it's not so it's not so tightly held in your hands. When you open it up and you can start looking at it, you can see it as close to objective as possible. Because that's the idea. You want to remove the subjective experience so that you can see it for what it is. So if I'm getting someone to go through a breakup, for instance, the thing that I'm doing with the breakup is I'm figuring out where their worldview is right now, where their pain points are right now, what are the maladaptive coping mechanisms that they're holding on to from the breakup that is causing them pain, because the mind is amazing at one thing, and that is trying to overanalyze to figure out where we did things wrong or where we could have fixed it, because we're trying to close off the loop from the breakup. So instead of trying to fix anything or, see that it's broken or anything like that, it's to get to a little bit more of acceptance. And that's where light trance work, covert linguistics comes in. And then you can get people to, the moment that they've loosened up that grip around the worldview, that's where they can start going inwards a little bit more. So in my worldview, because everyone's worldview is different, I believe everyone can be hypnotized to the same level that I can. It's just a level of consciousness and trust. So the more rapport that I build with people, the more trust and the evidence that I build up showing them just how much this is working is the thing that is going to allow them to go into a much deeper level of trance. So using covert linguistics with people, even just in everyday waking consciousness, like I'll use it ethically because my ethics is I want to see everyone do the greatest possible things with their lives as possible. I believe everyone has infinite potential. I believe everyone can have and experience anything that they want and therefore choose and take massive action towards in their life. So if someone wants to become a multimillionaire, fantastic, you can do it. If someone wants to, go off grid and live by themselves and raise some animals and, those sorts of things, fantastic, you can do it. However, I'm coming from that place that I believe that whatever it is that you think that you're capable of doing in your life, I'm going to help you do because that's just who I am. I'm everyone's greatest cheerleader. So using linguistics, like I sell supplements as one of the many hats that I wear. So when I'm working in the supplement shop, I'm finding out people's needs. I'm going through an analysis of those needs. I'm then making some interpretations and some inferences from it where I'm asking deepening questions to get more information around it. I'm finding out what their pain points are, not to pinpoint on them or to try and fix them, in order for them to see the gap that I am the bridge that they can cross to get to the other side. I'm doing that to help support them in their best needs. They're coming into the shop because they want supplements. They want something that they can take, which they think is going to fix their problem, or it's going to be a thing that helps them get to the place where they can fix that problem. So I'm using language patterns to help them make the decisions for their best version of themselves so that they can get out of their own way. Because in a sales context, people don't understand that the moment that they say yes to whatever the product or service is that they're buying, because they think there's a need that they're missing. So they want that product or service that's going to get them to the other side of the bridge where their goals are, where they've already achieved it. That step of saying yes and paying and going through the process is the breakthrough. Everything that happens afterwards is because they've already said yes. So a great person in any kind of communication will get them to the point of deep rapport and trust where they can say yes to whatever that goal is. So using it in a therapeutic model, like I said, bringing that curiosity into whatever it is that you're trying to work through, and just dissociating enough so that you can see it as objective as possible, and then bringing more curiosity to it, to where they might say, hey, would you like to try some hypnosis work? And then at that point, if you've built enough rapport and trust with them, they will say yes, or they'll put up some boundaries around it. And that's completely okay as well. Boundary, like when it comes to hypnosis, you will never do anything that is against your own values and belief set. So if I hypnotized you and conditioned you and put all these, embedded commands in to happen with post-hypnotic suggestions, a lot to jargon way of saying, I'm going to put something in for you to go KILL someone, you wouldn't do it unless it's a part of your belief structure that you could do it. If you don't believe that you could ever do that, no matter how suggestible, no matter how much conditioning was done, then you're not going to do it. If you believe it's inherently wrong, no, you're not going to do it.
Good to know, because that actually leads right into my second question, because you're saying you're using it ethically, and that's good. You're trained in it. You understand where the boundaries are. But I imagine that there's a world of people who have studied this, politicians, anyone who's trying to be influential, who could be using hypnosis without the listener's consent. What are telltale signs? How do we watch out for it so that we don't fall victim to this?
Yeah, great question. The thing that you pointed on there that is the key is the influence. People that want to influence through nefarious means, there's a lot of different sensory inputs that you can understand inside of your body when something is encroaching upon belief structures, upon values, upon ethics, right versus wrong, morality, and it has a look to it. There's, like, when you're watching them do it, there's an incongruence inside of them, because at some level of abstraction, a part of them doesn't believe this is right. So you can watch for the incongruence in themselves as they're presenting it. Then sounds, there will be gaps in the words, or there'll be confusing things deliberately, because that's what linguistics are, is to bypass that critical faculty. There's almost a smell to it. It's like, this smells fishy. This smells like shit. This smells like it's too good to be true. Because one thing that humans don't use very often anymore is our olfactory senses. You know when something's off. It's like, nah, something's wrong here. And I can't put my finger on what it is, but it doesn't feel right. It doesn't sit right. It looks weird. It sounds weird. It smells bad. I can't get the taste out of my mouth. You understand intrinsically inside of your body when someone's trying to manipulate you, if you're intelligent and self-aware enough. Majority of the people, though, think of the IQ bell curve. Anyone sub 80 IQ, nah, they're not introspective enough. They are going to essentially internalize everything. The majority of the population lives somewhere between that 80 to like 110 IQ. So they are the masses that can be suggested, and that will a lot of the time go along with the flow. They're the ones like, oh, I don't want to be the one that stands out. Like tall poppy syndrome here we have in Australia is the moment that you stand out, you get locked off by the rest of the crowd because we don't want to stand out. Why would you stand out? Why would you go against the grain? Why would you do that? So there's a lot of social conditioning that goes into it as well to keep everyone suggestible and in that state. Not to sound too much like a conspiracy theorist, though, that sounds a bit wacky when you say that sort of thing. However, it's how people operate in tribes. We've done this for our whole human history. So when people have that intrinsic thing, it's like, I don't know exactly what the thing is that I don't trust about this. However, I'm going to trust my distrust.
Oh, I'm going to trust my distrust. If people can tap into that and hold it and give it space, they might be able to figure it out. But I think you're right when you touch on the problem that if someone just doesn't have the capacity, that's why you find people falling prey to cults, to bad leadership, to just all sorts of issues that we have in society. It's unfortunate to hear that the culture over there is not to stand out and not to try to do things independently. And I mean, here, obviously, there's all sorts of other issues that stem from that too, and how crazy our politics have gotten lately. That being said, so this kind of work, like hypnosis, can be done to large crowds. When you're not in person, it can be done over video on social media. So you have to watch out for that too, huh?
Yeah. Essentially, in the modern age, because communication is so pervasive, we get it everywhere. It's on the anxiety rectangles that we have glued to our hands majority of the day. It's in the speech that's coming from pretty much anyone who has any kind of influence. It's coming from music. Honestly, it's everywhere. It's bombarding us. There is so much propaganda out there. It's not even funny. From the written perspective, like the only example that comes to mind is what the White House released. I think it was in 2021 when it came just before Christmas, and it said, if you've done the thing, you're fine. If you haven't done the thing and you're an unthing, consider it a winter of sickness and death.
Yeah, I remember that.
Like, how's that for propaganda? How's that for suggestions and othering people? The moment that you divide anyone, you can essentially conquer anyone's mind, because divided, we fall. We need to unite and we can stand strong. However, as a populace, it's like, well, this is the right thing to do. That's the wrong thing to do. You're not the person that does the wrong thing, are you? Like, inside of that, there's embedded commands and there's so many presuppositions in what I just said. It's like, what type of person are you? Do you do the right thing or do you do the wrong thing? Are you a contrarian? Because a contrarian isn't a part of society, because we live in a society. That's where the level of abstract linguistic propaganda that comes in. We're bombarded with it 24/7. So you really have to be paying attention. And if you're not paying attention, if you're blindly following, then you're asleep. You're asleep at the wheel and someone else is using your mind.
I'm just digesting all of this because it's so obvious how much of it does get used not for the greater good. I mean, obviously it can be used for the greater good, but just the implications. Like, okay, let's switch gears because that's such a depressing rabbit hole to go too far
It's
down.
heavy, isn't it?
It's very, very heavy. Can you use hypnosis, linguistics? How would you apply it to win an argument?
Oh, okay. That's a great question. To win an argument first implies someone has to lose the argument, right?
Yeah.
What if we can create a frame that allows it to be a win-win? Not a equal win-win. It's a capital W-I-N versus a lowercase W-I-N. Because every time that you create a win-win, there's asymmetry in it. Someone has won more. Someone has won less. Someone has forked over more money. Someone has gotten a good service at a discount. There's loads of asymmetry in a win-win. You determine what that asymmetry looks like. When it comes to an argument gets taken from a discussion the moment that emotions come into it. So if I was to create a scenario where there's a conversation, there's a discussion, there's a negotiation going on that starts turning into an argument, is because someone's emotions have gotten triggered, someone has become defensive, someone has closed off their curiosity. And then the way that we win that person back over so we can have the win-win in the some form of asymmetry is going to be meeting their highest abstract intention with my highest abstract intention, so that we can see that there's a bridge and a connection there. No matter what, you take things out to the highest perspective, you can get people to be on the same page. So in business, for instance, people have a lot of problems with competing sections of the company. So marketing has a lot of problems with sales, has a lot of problems with, the product manufacturing. Like management has a problem with all of it because they're the ones who have to put out all the spot fires. The way that we figure out what the highest intention is go, Jan, for instance, in marketing, what is your best thing that you love about this job? What's the thing that is driving your mission to become successful and hit your KPIs and targets and deliver a great message? And she'll say whatever she says. And then you switch it over to the other side and you go, Bob, what's your direct targets? What's the thing that you need to do? And they'll come up with whatever their first answer is. And then you go separate and you say, okay, in our perspective from the business, we want to turn over profit every single year, because if you have a business that isn't producing profit, you don't have a business. 2, we want to deliver the best product or service possible. 3, we want to make sure our customers are happy and satisfied, and also they refer on to other people, because that makes marketing so much easier and it makes delivering more products so much easier. And then so they sit there and they go, yeah, well, I want that too. So that common understanding inside of the negotiation takes down the emotion, and therefore the win-win can happen, because you're both coming from the same problem, but you're not seeing that you're in the exact same perspective. So to go, okay, I have these marketing targets that I need to do. I have X amount of, email newsletters to sign up and so on and so forth. And sales is going, well, I have this many cold reaches that I need to do from those emails. We're both doing it from a different perspective in the company, but we both have the same highest intention. Now can we create a solution? And then that's where the asymmetry win-win comes in, because they're both subordinating the things that they want the most in that scenario, but they're agreeing that for the greater good of the company, for the greater good of the KPIs and the goals and targets and profit and so on and so forth, they will communicate at a level that allows them to come together and create synergy instead of incoherence and incongruence.
If it's gotten past the point, let's say you're the calm one in the scenario, you're dealing with opposition, they're screaming, they're in a heightened emotional state, you just want to bring that boil down to a simmer, what kinds of phrases would you reach for? What kinds of words would you use to try to get them to at least relax so you can ask that question? What is your goal?
Yeah, so it sounds like you've got a lot going on right now, and I don't know if it's something that I did wrong, and if it is, I'm really sorry. I just want to acknowledge the fart in the room. Let's cool it down a little bit, because I think we're both getting heated. I know for myself, I don't communicate very well when that happens. Is there anything that I have done to upset you? And if so, please let me know, because I'm sorry.
I like that a lot, because you're taking accountability even though they're the ones losing their mind.
Exactly. You cannot continue to get angry at someone who's taking accountability for their actions and then inviting you to do the same, because you just look like a dickhead. The moment that you offer and you hold space for I'm wrong and I'm taking responsibility for all of the parts that I did wrong, and please let me know what I did wrong because I'm willing to do something, and then actually taking action to do something about it, because otherwise it's just speak. It doesn't mean anything. There has to be tangible evidence to show that you're actually willing to do it. Then with the moment that you invite them to be in that same space and the same emotion and communication, that's where everything can calm down. Another great way of using this, it's called a pattern interrupt. So I've used it a couple of times with really aggressive people just out and about, out in Surfers Paradise is kind of like our party precinct here on the Gold Coast. And so, we'll be out with friends and some drunk idiot will start getting aggressive. And the fastest way to disarm someone, if you're confident in doing this, is by bypassing their intentions with a pattern interrupt. So a pattern interrupt is something that is so outside of normal experience in that moment that stops them in their tracks and makes them reconcile with what the hell just happened. So for instance, using a piece of linguistics that says something nothing to do with the scenario. So in a pub or club scene, they're drinking, there's communication, there's dancing, there's a little bit of aggression around, because that's kind of always under the surface in a group setting like that, especially where there's substances involved. I had one guy bump into me and then start getting aggressive with me. And then he's like, yeah, I'm going to smash your head in, or whatever he said. And I said, do you know I can't jump over a 4-foot fence? And it stopped him. And he was like, what the hell are you talking about? I was like, yeah, I tried. It's just this weird thing. I've got these jeans on. I just can't get over a 4-foot fence. What do you think? What do you think I should do? And he goes, wear different pants. And he walked off. He was so confused, it wasn't even funny for him. He was just, he tucked his tail between his legs and walked off. And it's because I hijacked his mind in that scenario, where I gave him a problem to solve that had nothing to do with the initial problem that he thought he was going to have to solve. He's like, bumped into me, there's a guy there, it's a bigger guy, I'm probably going to have to fight him, let's get aggressive. Like, that's the logical sequence of events that happened inside of his mind. And then from there, I gave him a completely different pattern interrupt that broke that sequence of bump into guy, he's a big guy, I make an inference meaning that he's a big guy, I'm probably going to have to fight him. Then to take it to the logical conclusion of being in a punch on, I blocked it here and I said, no, we're not doing this outcome. Everyone can do that the moment, but you have to be really confident to do it, because otherwise, if you don't sell it properly, you're pretty much going to get into an altercation.
Yeah, if you ask the wrong question, you're going to make it worse.
Yeah, so like the tag question at the end of it is kind of, that's where it's where the power comes in. So you can say anything, you can say any nonsense, and just be like, I like the color pink. Do you like turquoise? And then that's enough to disarm someone. It's the end question that you reflect back onto them, because being in an angry state, you can't access those parts of your brain. You essentially need to come back into prefrontal cortex sort of thinking, higher abstract thinking, in order to access that part of your memory. Because let's be honest, when you're in a fight or flight scenario, you're not accessing higher consciousness. You're accessing amygdala.
Yeah, that's really the problem with it. Why do you think people get so tripped up with linguistics and with arguments?
We're never taught language properly. We're taught in school, especially in Australia, we stop really pushing English from about grade 9 onwards. So grade 9, you're 14 years old. Like, you're in your social role modeling phase at that stage of your life. You don't care about a lot of things, especially linguistic semantics, especially presuppositions of the language that we use. So the hardest thing to teach is the moment that you are conscious and you're developing and you have friend groups and there's a hierarchy of social influence. And if you're on the lower end of the rung, you're going to do everything you can to get into a better social standing. It's just what happens in the teenage years. So the hardest thing that we have is to get this information into younger minds. And the way that we get this information into younger minds is we have to deep seed the suggestions in there just as a part of normal conversation. One thing that I've done I've got 2 daughters, 8 and 11. One thing I've done with them is I pre-frame so much for where they are right now that's future-paced into their teenage years, so I can parent them better when they're a teenager. I say things like, girls, there's going to be times where you don't and won't and can't understand what I'm telling you or even asking you to do. I need you to trust me when I have your best interest at heart, and I'm going to look at you in a certain way, and I'm going to say, hey, this is for your greatest good. You need to trust me right now. And because they're 8 and 11, I've been deep seeding this for them for years and years and years at this point. So they trust everything that I say when I say, hey, girls, this is one of those times. A perfect instance, they were watching something on kids Netflix the other day, and I was making dinner and I heard some of the shit that was going on in the TV show. It was very dramatic. It was, some teen drama thing. And the way that the girls were talking to each other, the teenagers were talking to each other, I hated the level of victimhood that was coming across, because it's unnecessary. Like, take accountability, take responsibility for what's going on, for the actions you took and the world that created, and like all these sorts of things. And so I said to the girls, I was like, hey, can you pause it for a second, please? This is one of those times and you're not going to like it. However, I need you to trust me that this show is not in your greatest good. I need you to watch something a little bit different that is a little bit more encouraging, a little bit more empowering, because the words that they're using in this show and the archetypes of what it is to be a teenage female is not something I want you guys to aim at. And you won't understand it now. Like, I've used a lot of words at you, but please trust me when I say that this isn't for your greatest good. And they both looked at me and they took a deep breath. They sighed and they were like, okay, Dad. And they watched something else. But I can only do that because of the foundational work that I've done with words and like getting them to feel it inside of their body when there's congruent truth in their body versus incongruence. Your body will show you signs and symbols and symptoms, essentially paving you the way forward for what is true and authentic.
Right. I mean, it's so good that you're getting a jump start on this because you're right, they're not going to listen to you once puberty hits, but at least you're already laying down that foundation. I mean, that's so exciting to hear about. And that kind of leads me into this next thing because I want to know what you think the way is to navigate doing shadow work and doing this healing work. It's just so obvious you've done that work. So, what is a good way for men to think about it and pursue it in a way that doesn't challenge their masculinity?
I think the way that any bloke needs to confront their emotions, their feminine side, shadow work, like going into models of reality like Carl Jung's work, is to see it through the lens of curiosity first. That's the one thing that disarms it. It dissociates you from what's happening and the brunt of the experience underneath. As blokes, we're conditioned into a world of, in Australia, essentially, it's she'll be right, piece of cake, shut up, get on with it. Like, no one cares, no one gives a fuck about you. Your emotions don't matter. Just do the work, shut up. Like, that's very much what it's taught. It's into that tall poppy syndrome as well. We don't want to stand out. So if you start standing out for any way, you'll get shut down straight away. So instead of denying, suppressing, and avoiding, which is essentially what builds that shadow side, instead of doing that, invite it out in a container where you can bring curiosity to it. So Jung is one of my favorite lenses to view things through because he's so symbolic in nature. When you're witnessing any kind of unconscious content, so the unconscious is anything that's outside of your immediate awareness, beliefs, memories, values, any meta programs, memories that have certain themes and trends and colors and lenses that are over the top of it that are ineffective and false, because we don't view reality as it is. We view it as we are. That's what perception is. Projection means we have an internal map of reference, and majority of the time it's going to be very low resolution that we constantly project into the outside world. We literally map it onto 3D reality, always knowing that you're wrong. Like, you might be right about some things, but you're wrong. And bringing the curiosity to see, okay, where and how am I wrong? And what am I willing to do about it? Like I said before, it's not integrated, it's not actualized until you can take accountability and responsibility for it. And responsibility is your ability to respond, not react. So taking responsibility for yourself is something external happens, and instead of going triggered and reacting to it and getting angry or fighting or whatever, it's going, okay, it's my ability to respond. So I need to take a second. I need to calm myself. I need to look within and think, okay, where is this true? Because it's all true. Every single human has every single other human's traits. That's what it is to do shadow work, is to look at the malevolent side of you, the disgusting side, the parts of you that you deny, suppress, and avoid because they're disgusting. There's a lot of resentment, there's embarrassment, there's shame, guilt, sadness, upset. Like, there's so many negative emotions that are probably lending a incomplete lens to the things that are in your memory, in your unconscious. And so bringing it into the light of consciousness with that lens of curiosity allows you to see through what's actually there a lot easier. I strongly suggest, though, don't do it by yourself to start off with. When you get to a place where you're comfortable of doing deep introspective work, looking at old wounds, literally pulling apart old scars so you can see what's underneath them, and then the way that they maladaptively create complexes and strategies that infiltrate your everyday life, you need to be with a therapist. You need to be someone that you trust. Thankfully, as blokes like to walk side by side with a lot of other blokes, and there's a lot of great therapists out there that are men. That at the same time, if you have not done the internal work on your emotions and your feminine side, the anima, as Jung calls it, being with a female therapist might be the thing that triggers you further and hurts you even more. Oh, wow. So you have to be really careful. The anima projection that goes on inside of a unhealed man that has no idea about his feminine side, that is using things like porn and masturbation and sex and substance abuse and all these other things to mask what is going on for him, that's going to be a rough experience, because you're so devoid from anything feminine in your life that you project a surface level hedonistic pleasure seeking behavior onto it. The more you can remove yourself from those sorts of behaviors, the more that you can come back into center and find peace. Because ultimately, like, none of us are getting out of this place alive. And do you want to live in a place in your mind and body and with your goals and future and, you know, partners and stuff like that, where you are at peace, or where you're constantly having to be fighting things that come up that you don't want to express, that you don't want to feel?
What's a digestible way for someone who's just beginning on the journey with this stuff to maybe start integrating it into their daily lives? Do you yourself have some kind of morning routine or something that people can just start taking baby steps with to get on the path with this?
Yeah, so the first thing that I do every single day is when I wake up, I hold the intention that I'm choosing my partner first. My partner, Rachel, she is the love of my life. We've been together for 9 years, 10 years, on the 9th of this month, actually, when Sleep Token's album comes out. Yeah, it's the anniversary of our first date. So that's pretty damn cool. My first intention that I have when I wake up is her. I choose her first, because choosing her first allows me to be the best version of me possible. The reason why I say this is because she has been the catalyst for all of the growth and the man that I am right now. If not for her, I wouldn't be the man that I am and the man that I'm becoming. I wouldn't be the father. I wouldn't be the coach. I wouldn't have the intellect. None of my life would be possible if not for her. Because I understand that the relationship of the feminine is to antagonize the masculine into greatness. I know that. I've seen it my whole life. Everyone has. That's what nagging is. However, because we're not taught communications, we're not taught linguistics, we see nagging as a bad thing. Everything is a good and a bad thing until you label it. So because I saw such a poor representation of it growing up from all of my family members, I thought there has to be a better way of doing things. And then thankfully, I started getting into esoteric practices very early on, like 2012 sort of thing, learning about masculine, feminine dynamics and just seeing things as objective as possible. Also, I'm neurodivergent, so I overanalyze everything, because if there's something that I don't understand, I must get to the bottom of it so I can understand in order for me to fit in socially. It's one of the hardest things about being high mast is to not get called out all the time, to not be ostracized, to not be, left out of things. I have to act the same way that neurotypicals do. And one of the greatest ways of doing that is putting on the mask of persona that says, I can do these things too. However, underneath the surface, it's burning me out constantly. So that's just a little caveat there. So my first thing when I wake up, I hold that intention. I'm like, I have to put Rach ahead of me. I do that. I go out, I make my coffee first. Then I make her coffee whilst I'm holding that intention of choosing her. Whilst I'm frothing the milk, I'm sitting there thinking about all the ways that I love her, all the ways that I support her, or like just how I can be the best version of me possible for her to be the best version of her possible. The more permission I give her to be the best version of her, the more permission she can give me. So I want to enable as much infinite possibilities, infinite probabilities for her to go do, be, have, and experience all the things that she can, because that gives me permission as well. So whilst I'm sitting there doing that process and I'm putting all that love and intention into the coffee for her, I take it into her, I give her a kiss and I say, good morning, I love you. It's like the first thing that I start every single day with. I couldn't do it this morning because we ran out of milk, and it's like I'm out of routine right now and it's kind of feels a bit weird. So that's the way that I start every single day. I hold a higher intention greater than myself. And that's kind of one of the greatest things that I could offer is hold an intention, hold a desire to want and need to service other people. The moment that you become of service is the moment that you're not focused on yourself. It's like, I have to do everything in my power to make other people's lives better, not from like a self-sacrifice perspective, not from a setting myself on fire to keep other people warm perspective. It's because my light, my warmth only grows when I help other people. It calls the best of me forward. And I want everyone else to have the greatest life possible that I know that is possible for myself, and that I get to experience the love and the joy and the fulfillment and the purpose every single day. So why would I not do that with everyone else? And then it takes the anxiety away from you, because when you're anxious, you're focusing on yourself. You're focusing on problems of the future for yourself. When you focus on depression and you're in a negative state, you're focused on how bad things have been in the past, but not how good things have been in the past either, because everything is perfectly split. There's a perfect duality. So holding that abstraction in your mind that says things can be better, things must be better, and I'm the one who's capable of doing it, is the first place where you can start to get into the understanding that things can change.
Beautifully put. Dave Sarkany, if people want to learn more about you and connect with you, where should they go?
Jump over to TikTok mainly. It's Dave_Rise, RYSE. So Rise is my business, is to raise your standards everywhere. And I'm also over on YouTube. I've got a podcast, which is RYSE Movement. And that's the best places you can find me. TikTok, Instagram's kind of okay. It's not really popping off. The algorithm doesn't really like me. But yeah, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, that's where you find me. And with Sleep Token stuff coming up, there's a load more that I'll be putting out in the coming weeks.
I'm going to want a separate episode just on that. I'm also very jealous that I think you're getting it like a day before I am.
Yeah, the joys of living over this side of the world.
Anyways, thank you so much for doing the show. This has been such a valuable conversation.
I hope everyone got at least little something out of it. I'm sure they'll get a lot though.
I think so too. Thank you for coming on the show, and thank you everybody for listening. Bye.